Hello and welcome back to your part 2 of the Salvador Dali practice. And we ended with layering in our highlights and our lighter midtones. We're going to continue on this side of the face because it looks a little bit more complex. And then we're going to blend. And we're going to save the eyes for last because that way we can kind of judge how much lighter or darker they need to be compared to the skin tone. So avoid the eyes for now. All right, so I have my image next to me. I have newspaper padding underneath my black paper. And I have all my supplies out. I'm using the same blenders that I was using for the sphere practice. Okay, so we're going to continue on. All right, I'm looking at this part of his face where it's lighter and how it kind of fades up a little bit. I'm also looking at this kind of scooped like highlight underneath the bag of his eye and the shape of that highlight along the bag of his eye there. So that's where I'm going to kind of pay attention as I'm fading into that. Okay, so I have that line and I'm going to, it's a little bit lighter right underneath that bag, but I'm going to outline the crease so I know to go around it. And I'm going to fade down to this part, the crease right here to the left of his nostril, because that area is slightly darker. So I'm probably going to like fade out almost into the black paper. And of course the blender is going to do some of that work for me. Okay, so I'm going to fade up a little bit. And so since the side of his nose isn't super dark, I'm going to really lighten my pressure and fade in. Like even here, some of my darker kind of midtones. Okay, let's see. Go along here because it definitely has a darker edge underneath that little, under the lower lid, I guess you could say, of his eye. Okay, actually I am going to sharpen my pencil because I want to not outline, but I want to create a clean edge for that mustache. So remember to use your red sharpener. Dun, 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 dun. It is designed for charcoal pencils specifically. And then we use them for lots of other stuff because it's just a good sharpener. All right, so that mustache, I must avoid. I mustache you to avoid the mustache. Okay, so I am outlining it, but I'm not pressing very hard. And you can always go a little bit thicker because then when you blend, you're going to bring it in a little bit. So I kind of err on the side of like going a little bit thicker of an outline. And I'm going to match that line and kind of fade it in. It's kind of fading up. It's lighter right underneath that lower lid. Fading out. And then I'm going to add another layer to the lighter part of the cheek. I'm going to go in the opposite direction so it really kind of smooths out a little bit and then fade out. Okay, so I'm trying not to lose that crease coming off of the nostril. Okay, so on the other side of the mustache, match that value, and I'm going to kind of look at how it curves up a little bit, like onto his, towards his temple or his cheekbone. And I'm kind of maintaining my value map right here where I have this curved kind of mid-tone there. So I'm avoiding it for right now. I'm avoiding the cast shadow from the mustache. Let's get that up a little bit. Okay, there we go. And then I'm going to totally avoid like this whole area of the cast shadow of the mustache, but I am going to add a little bit of value in here so that when I'm blending this whole area, like that area is slightly darker, but it's going to, you know, fade out. So I'm lightening up my pressure. And I'm going to do really gentle pressure along the temple because it's still like a medium kind of mid-tone. I'm looking underneath the cast shadow of his mustache. I have this like, I don't know, I have this line here that I totally went around, but that should not actually be there. Hang on, I'm just gonna fill that in. Let's come back to the eyes. Let's do lips. Okay, so where I put the lines, that's where the highlights were. So I'm gonna add a little bit of value on top of those so I can kind of retain. And I do want them to be like, notice how the lines on his lips are a little more curved on the outer corners. And like in the middle, it's a little bit more straight. So the shape of the highlight is really going to create the form of the lips. And I wanna make sure they're curved so that his lips look curved. Okay, so then I notice on this side of his lip kind of fading over, it almost matches the skin tone. So I'm gonna add a little bit, and then I think we're gonna add that skin tone there to kind of give it a similar value. I mean, it's slightly darker right underneath the lip, but okay, so I'm gonna kind of, I wanna keep this texture of the creases. So I'm gonna go over them a little bit more brightly than we, I press a little bit hard, I guess. I'm noticing how it kind of fades out. And we have that shadow underneath. Okay, so then on that skin, I do want to keep the, like this part right here extending from the lip, like the wrinkle part of his jowls, which happens when you get older. So I want to kind of keep that. So I'm going to gently outline a little bit so I know to go around it, and then we'll blend it in when we actually blend. Okay, so that upper lip is pretty dark. I'm trying to see, but there is, like I can see a little bit of the edge of the lip here. So I'm gonna super gently draw that in. And it kind of like comes up. It comes down, and then to the right is a little bit of value. Okay, now what we've been avoiding. The eyes. We're just gonna do the skin around the eyes. Okay, so, you know what? Yeah, let's avoid the waterline. We'll do that when we actually do the eyes. So I am gonna put the little bit of a highlight that's on that upper eyelid, just a little bit, like right here. So I added a little, and then I'm gonna definitely add a little bit of the highlight on the upper lid, kind of fading into the eyebrow. And notice how it's like lighter here on that curved, kind of overlapping, fatty, puffy part. And then it fades out. And so since it's kind of liney curving this way, like I'm not gonna be so concerned with smooth texture, because it's not smooth right there. So I faded it out and I left it kind of liney. Okay, so then for the eyebrow itself, or kind of let's see, I would say up here, I'm gonna pull some of the white into the eyebrow, but kind of also in a way outlining it, because we want some of the skin to show through the eyebrow. We just don't want it to be solid black. And then when we actually do the eyebrow, we'll erase them out, we'll put some in, etc. Okay, so looking like this part, like getting really close to his tear duct, and like how there's a highlight that kind of curves here, and it fades into, kind of cuts off that bag a little bit and fades into what we have. I'm looking at also here, that curvature, fading from the eyebrow down to like the tear duct. So it's not straight black. And I'm gonna add just a little bit. Trying to keep the shape of the eyebrow. Okay, just a little bit. Okay, on the other side, can we add any more? I feel like we did a pretty good job of going around and adding stuff on that side. Ooh, I think we're ready to blend. Okay, he looks creepy and scary. So he will continue to look creepy and scary until we add the eyeballs, but we're gonna avoid those for now. I'm going to use the medium blender just because I feel like we have more control. We'll use the bigger blender in the background, and of course, you know, your self-portraits are bigger, so you're probably gonna use the bigger blender. So I have just my medium and smalls because that's all I really need for this practice. Okay, so what I do when I blend is, we spent all that time value mapping and trace transferring the range of value. Then we spent all that time putting in the range of value, and you want to keep it. And it will look kind of shapy and weird. It's almost like when we shaded glass, like where it's all kind of value mappy and then you go back and blend. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to blend out the highlights first. And I'm very concerned with keeping the shape, because we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to build up the highlights. So I'm gonna blend my super light parts first and kind of keep those shapes as I'm blending. Especially along the edges. And remember, as you're starting to blend, you don't want to press very hard because we're gonna build up layers to this, especially in parts 3. Maybe a little bit for 4 as well. But I want to make sure I'm blending in multiple directions. So I blended like horizontally. I went back and I blended vertically. And then I would probably do like a once over in a different direction. So try not to press very hard because it's really easy to burnish this paper, meaning you're going to flatten it and it makes it shiny. Okay, so when I'm blending, I am going to pull, kind of use the tip a little bit and pull some hairs into the mustache. I don't know why I never thought of practicing on this guy when all the mustache stuff was super popular. We could have had so many funny jokes. Okay, I'm going to, now I want to go along my, let me not mess that up. I want to go along all the parts I have to avoid just to get like a clean edge. So I don't have to be so careful on my blending. So you definitely want to use some smaller circles, then I kind of go back with some medium-sized circles for circular motion, and then some larger ones, just kind of fade the areas together. And I am going to go right up to this highlight because there's not like a dark halo around it. And it doesn't smudge that well anyway together. I just want to try to avoid like totally blending in the highlight on the nose. Just remember, multiple directions, little circles, medium circles, bigger circles. Okay, I'm gonna avoid the nose actually, because we're definitely gonna go in with the smaller blender on that. And let's do the cheek. That doesn't look too hard. So I kind of hop around, like I look at what looks easy, get all the easy stuff done, then you're gonna get better as you go. And of course, if it's awkward for you to keep it vertical, you don't have to. I am so you can see it, but like that is not comfortable naturally for my shoulder. Actually it hurts to blend having this vertical. So turn your paper so that your arm is comfortable. Because you'll probably be willing to blend a little bit more if you're comfortable. Okay. And looking a little less creepy. Alright. I'm going to keep this like highlighted shape here. So I'm going to blend in that area first, then I'll blend out to the rest of it. So keep your shapes of value. I'm going to twist a little bit just because it's hard to get along that edge and still avoid that cast shadow. And it doesn't have to be perfect. This cast shadow definitely fades out, so I'm actually not going to outline it on this side because it does fade into the darker midtones. So I'm doing smaller circles. And I'm holding my blender like in the middle. And if you can hold it at the end, then that would help you use less pressure. So if you tend to be heavy-handed, so I blend each section or each area at least a couple of times in different directions. I think that's key. Like if your sphere blending wasn't very smooth, you probably like did it once over, you're like, yeah, that's good, it's blended. Well, you're gonna have to really kind of work your blending. Okay, so I'm keeping that shape at first. Okay. I'm going around that crease or wrinkle, and we'll come back and we'll make that, we'll blend over it and we'll come back and make it smaller. Okay, let's be careful with the lips, but yeah, let's do the lips. So I'm gonna touch blend, where I'm just like kind of brushing over my lip lines. Okay, then I'm gently gonna blend over. Then I'm gonna kind of blend together right there. It's like we're gonna have to erase out a little bit underneath the lip anyway, so I'll just blend that part. Yeah, we're definitely gonna have to. That shadow did not stay as large as it needed to. Okay, other side of the face, and then We're going to add another layer to the highlights, and then we're going to do a little bit more blending to get rid of the shapes. Actually, that skin on this side of the eye, like the light skin connects in here. So I'm noticing I did not do that. So I'm gonna extend that into the highlight. And I don't think that curve comes up as far as what I had. I'm going to hop back down to below the nose. So I'm going to use less pressure because right underneath that nose it is, you know, slightly lighter in some of those shadowy parts. The skin above the lip. We're obviously going to come back to the mustache. Okay, let's go above the eyes, and then I'm definitely going to turn this to do the forehead. So for above the eyes, remember, we don't really want like a perfect outline because it's all wrinkly, kind of soft skin there. So if it's not perfect, it's okay. Kind of fuzzy. We want that weird texture, the crepiness of his skin, which is what happens to your skin when you get old. All the fabulous things that start happening when you get old. Okay. All right, to the other eye. So I'm doing smaller circles just to try to get a good base layer. But then when I reach the outer corner, I'm going to kind of like pull, like with my blender, I'm going to go in that direction. And we will be erasing out the mustache as well. In our final stages, I go back and erase out the black parts. Just like with graphite, you would go back and erase out your highlights again to like make them really bright. I have to do the opposite of that. Okay, so I know the forehead's big, but we're going to do small circles first, then some bigger ones, and then we'll kind of blend in the direction of the forehead, the curvature of it. I am gonna turn it slightly so I can get, actually I just wanna, let's go around the wrinkles. I don't wanna mess up those wrinkles. Sorry, I'm turning the forehead to the side so I can get right up to that edge. So you want the edge of the value and not the outline to make your different parts and details visible. So that doesn't count as blending. I'm just matching the outline. Okay, so I know they're there. I know to avoid them. And you want to try, like, if you have something under your hand, you want to try not to slide it. Just like pick it up and move it, because it will. I mean, I think for some of you, that's kind of what happened in some of the dark parts of your sphere. And I'm like, hey, you should go back and erase out your core shadows. Okay, so I blended one direction. I'm gonna go back and blend another. So blending with more pressure is not the key with this black paper. So more pressure, you just flatten the paper, you burnish it, and then you cannot like erase anything out and you can't really add to it, and it's very frustrating. I didn't see any of that happening in the sphere thus far, but of course I've only graded like 9 or 10 of them at this point. So I'm going back with more layers of blending. I want to get rid of that white outline too. Okay, so in his hairline, I'm going to be pretty careful, and I'm just going to kind of follow what I had, and I want it to be jaggedy, like I'm pulling some of the skin up into the hair. We'll adjust that. So it does look jaggedy right now. We're going to go back later. That'll be like some of our last stages, all the little hairs. Okay, we're ready to add another layer to our highlights. I feel like the nose highlight's really bright, but I'm gonna add a thin layer and then I'm gonna fade it out a little bit because I feel like even the top of the nose, the bridge of the nose to the right hand side is a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna mess up that value map. I'm gonna fade it out, kind of get rid of it slightly, and then down looking at the tip of the nose here, that highlight kind of fades over further than what I have for that shape. Okay, then I'm at a little bit more on the nostril. Okay, looking at the left cheek, so right underneath that bag of his eye. I'm going to build it up right underneath, and then it kind of fades down. And then I'm going to fade that out. It kind of fades and curves up a little bit. And then it goes all the way to like the saggy, creepy skin. And it fades in. Okay, so we're bringing that forward. See, like right here, we probably need to go a little bit lighter underneath the nostril. Kind of squint my eyes, make them fuzzy, and I look at the picture, and they're side by side in my view, and I'm like squinting my eyes, make them fuzzy, and looking at this and comparing. I feel like over here needs to be a little bit lighter because it continues on the other side of the mustache. So I'm going to try to get a clean edge, and it kind of curves up. And I'm going to fade out that cast shadow a little bit. Ooh, maybe not that far. We might have to erase some of that. Oh well, that's okay. Okay, squinting my eyes, making fuzzy. I feel like I'm gonna just fade this down a little. And then it is light, like where the cast shadow meets the mustache. Fade out and fade up into what I have. Just a thin layer. I'm gonna redraw that a little bit. And while I'm there, actually I got too far into that cast shadow. Let me erase out. So looking at the chin, I look at how like the left side of the chin is a little bit lighter. I'm gonna add a little bit more. And then some kind of fading over along that crease. I'm gonna fade down. It's a little bit lighter. Fading into the lip and that skin below. I feel like his lip on the left-hand side does need to be a little bit lighter. So I'm gonna do like a thin layer, and then I'm gonna go back over my lines so that they stay there when I blend. Okay, I think this area right to the left of the chin is like too pronounced. So I'm do a thin layer, kind of combining those two shapes into the midtones. Okay, above the lip, I feel like now it needs to get a little bit lighter. And we'll fix the lip. I think I got a little bit like this, the left side needs to be fixed. Okay. Now the right hand side of the, actually let's go a little bit more on this upper eyelid. Pretty much like in the center here, because it's a, you know, your eyeball is a sphere. And on the center of that crepey fat area above his left eye. And then I'm gonna just fade out. That way, like the light looks like it's picking up like in here. And then we'll move it. It's such a small area, we can use the blender to move some of that. Okay, so looking at the the right eye, like just a little bit in here in the center part is where it needs to get lighter and kind of curves over. So I'm kind of just scribbling. I'm looking at kind of like a triangle, like right here. And then of course we'll blend that out. I feel like over here might need just a little bit of a layer. Okay, forehead. Let's see. I'm gonna definitely fade out my highlight, and I'm gonna look at how, like I am gonna add another layer in here. And usually you would want to look like really close at your lips and the eyes, because that is different skin than the rest of your face. It's also why it wrinkles more quickly as you age, because it actually is a different type of skin. So it picks up highlights different. Okay, I'm gonna cover this. All right, we're looking at like here, pretty much, and then I want to kind of just fade it out. I'm gonna avoid like this side a little bit and like up in here, maybe a little bit towards the hairline. And then we're gonna, since the forehead is so big, we're gonna double check and make sure you have smooth value. So if you have an area that doesn't look smooth, we need to go back and add another layer. So like over here in his temple, but I don't want it to get very much darker. So I'm gonna do a super thin layer in the opposite direction. Like over here, it doesn't look very smooth. Although that's exactly where I don't want to be adding any value. Although the curvature at the top is a little bit lighter, so I'll kind of fade that in. And then I am going to match this outline and kind of fade it out because I don't want it to look like his wrinkles have white outlines. So I'm going to match that value, fade it out, but barely any pressure. Okay, he's looking more lifelike. All right, in part 3, we will blend and do the eyes. Part 4, we're gonna refine and do the, we'll refine all the crepiness of the skin, touch-ups, etc. And then we'll do the background as well. Okay, so finish up part 2. So if you haven't gotten to this part, pause and get to that part.